Okay, so the CGP requirement was 6.5 for CSIT and 7 for electronics. There were total 4 rounds. First was an online test on the site called shldirect.com, and then there were 3 interview rounds, out of which 2 were technical and 1 was HR. Okay, so the online test was of 90 minutes. It had 2 sections. One was numerical reasoning and reading comprehensions. Each was of 45 minutes, and it was quite lengthy, though the calculators were allowed, and it was quite easy to clear. 14 students, around 14 to 16 students were selected, which finally faced the interviews. My first technical interview started with my introduction. Then he asked what subjects I hated the most, to which I replied with all the theory subjects like satellite communication and all, because they were easy, because there were obvious reasons to hate this. Then he asked that I was from an electronics background. Why do I want to enter into a software company? To which I told him about my interest, about my huge interest in programming, and I had done 3 projects in the software section, so they helped me a lot in justifying what I said. Then he gave me a situation where I was an employee of a company. He gave me a scanner. He said that I have a scanner and I have to scan various checks from different clients, and I had to build a system in order to archive that. So the system should be built according to my convenience. So it was a system design question. So I started with considering the system to be a black box, defining the inputs and outputs and different constraints, be it ease of use and level of security. And I gave both hardware and software perspective in this question. After he was satisfied, he gave me a puzzle, the good old puzzle where I had been given 10 packs of cigarettes. Each cigarette was 10 grams in weight, and there was one packet in which each cigarette was 9 grams in weight. So I had to find out which packet was that, and I could weigh only once. So I answered that correctly. Then he asked me whether I attended the PPT and what part of the PPT I liked the most. Thankfully I took attention in some of the parts he said, and I answered it with that only. Next, he asked me whether I had any questions from him. I asked him about whether they were planning to expand, like they are right now limited to air travel, and about the various divisions which exist in the company. That was all in my first round. Then I went to the second round. It started with my introduction. Then it was quite short round, lasted for about 10 to 15 minutes. Then he asked whether I had any interest in reading technology blogs. The only blog that came to my mind was Crazy Engineers, which I used to follow at that time. And then he asked me a very simple question in C, which was Fibonacci series, using recursion, which I did. Tried to confuse me, but I was not. Then he asked whether I had any questions. I told him that it had been cleared from the previous one. So next I was selected for the HR. My HR started with my introduction Again, she asked me that I was from electronics background, why should I enter into IT? And I replied with the same stuff. Then after she was convinced, she asked me whether I would be able to adjust in Bangalore. I had always been living in Jaipur, and even my family, would they agree, and all that things. Which I replied that I had already talked to them about that, because I had an interest in IT field and it was an IT hub, Bangalore. Then she asked me about my strengths and weaknesses, which I told, and then she asked me to give an example which depicts that I am a team person. I had done 3 projects and all of them in teams, so that I explained in my second and third internships. And in the end, we discussed the compensation package, and that was all. Okay, so I would suggest that you should be confident enough for the interviews, because all that was judged was your communication skills, and not much technical was asked in particular this company. And for the written exam, only requirement was the speed, because all questions were pretty easy, and calculators were allowed. And for the reading comprehension sections, each and every comprehension questions were asked directly, so you don't need to understand it, but you don't need to read between the lines. So pretty much that's it.